Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DotPro. I am BreakyCPK, and once again, excited to be here on what is technically episode number 25. I don't know, something about that number just feels great. You know, it's a quarter of the way to 100 episodes, of course. So still a long ways to go. I mean, we're still very early on, I like to think, of this show. And looking forward to continuing with it. But excited to be here once again. Plenty to talk about. You know, on that note, actually, really to get this out of the way, obviously, if you're tuning into this show, I'm sure you've heard by now, and maybe if you haven't, the organization of .p unfortunately did announce here recently that it is going to be no more in a I want to say about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks time frame. And as a result, the podcast shows that were a part of .p, including this one, are going to be no more, at least under that brand. Now, you know, I'll talk about this later on at the end of the podcast as well. I don't want to cover up too much at this point, but I will say right off the bat, I do plan, and Zrock as well as agree, we want to keep this show going in some sort. We do not have an actual set plan just yet, what it's going to be, what the rebrand's going to be, whatever, etc. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see what we come up with. I have some ideas. Don't know anything just yet, though. That's the best I can tell you, though, at this point. So, not hiding anything from you guys, literally. It's not that this crept up on me necessarily. It's just more so there's a lot going on, and I haven't really been able to think too much just yet as far as how to really keep things going on with this podcast show. But in some form or another, I think it's safe to say we'll have a competitive Dota 2 podcast show that myself and even Zrock will be co-hosting moving forward here. So, now that that's out of the way, as far as this week's show, we got plenty to talk about. A lot of recapping to do, as well as previewing our first major of the season, and then the ESL major going to be happening next week. Also, finally going to be joined by Player of Complexity once again. This time we're going to be joined by Chessie of Complexity. He's just coming off their result of the Starladder event where they finished top 4. A very good result, honestly. They got some points out of it. They got some good money out of it. And they had a couple of big victories, including over Newbie and Navi at the event. So excited to talk with Chessie and see how things are going with him, how the team came about, etc. We'll be joined by him shortly here. But before we do that, let's go over the good news and the bad news. The good news is Liquid won its first minor of the year. Or the very first minor of the year, frankly. Of course, the first one to take place, that being the Starladder. So, spoiler alert, but I figure if you're tuning into the show, that's kind of what the whole purpose of it is. Anyways, so Liquid wins the first minor of the year, and I gotta say, they looked pretty good doing it. Unlike their counterpart in Newbie, who was the runner-up, of course, Liquid looked like the similar team, if not even better in some ways, at this event. They rolled over the group stages undefeated. They defeated Secret 2-0 pretty decisively. And then they went on to take out Mineski in the grand finals 3-1. They did drop the first game for their only loss of the whole tournament, but they won 3 in a row and then took the tournament as a result. So if you're a Liquid fan, don't worry about any laps after TI. I think it's safe to say they're in a pretty good spot right now. And definitely have a bright season ahead of them. Clearly a team that's just ready to go and having a lot of fun while doing so. So Liquid, off to a great start here. That's definitely some good news. As far as the bad news goes, Happy Feet announced, I want to say even earlier today, if not late last night, that they cannot make the first major of the year due to visa issues. There was a report that came out. Apparently, they were going to be able to get the visas eventually, but by the time they got them, it was simply going to be too late. I don't know if it's going to be during or even after the event, which obviously wouldn't help at all. So ESL had to make a decision. They replaced them with actually Fnatic, which we'll talk about. I'll talk with Zrock about later on in the show and our opinions on that, but it sucks that we're already dealing with this. It's something where we've talked about how there's 16 minors, 11 majors, there's even other tournaments on top of that. A lot of these international events going on that are incorporating teams from all over the place, right? It's bound to happen. And here we are in a situation where Happy Feet, this is not necessarily the biggest organization. Obviously, it was an unexpected team of sorts that qualified for the first major of the year. how much that played a role into it. Again, we don't really know the full details on the whole visa issues right here, but you have to think for players and teams that are a little less experienced with the process, it's going to be that much more difficult. And it just sucks because it kind of ruins the flow of everything from the qualifiers to the event itself. But in the end, the event will go on. As I mentioned, Fnatic going to be replacing them. And we still have 8 teams, of course, that will be at the ESL Major. But sucks for Happy Feet. And as we've heard as well, they are not going to be getting any compensation either in terms of prize pool. I know, what was it, BTS, I want to say last year, they actually made a point to give part of the prize pool to a team that that was unable to make it due to some visa issues. That normally doesn't happen, though. So not to say that ESL's in the wrong here by any means, but just, another unfortunate side effect of not getting said visas here at this point. So that's the bad news. On top of it, Happy Feet, again, cannot make it to the ESL Major. Guys, super excited. We're going to be joined by Chessie coming up. Sit tight. We'll be right back. All right, what's up, guys? So I'm really excited now to be joined by, I'll say a good friend of mine for a long time here. At least I've known him for a while through, of course, back in the Han days, but into Dota 2 now and has had a successful career, to say the least, so far. And going to be joined by Chessie, currently of Complexity. Chessie, how's it going, man?
Hi, as I just told you earlier, I'm just trying to survive the AC disaster we got going on up here. The upstairs area where my room is insanely hot, so now I have to do this interview from the downstairs. Sad days.
Sad days indeed. No, but so you're there in the house in Florida, right? The Complexity house?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so is the weather bad right there right now? So it is pretty hot for you guys?
No, the weather is actually starting to cool down quite nicely. The entire summer has been super hot and, pretty bad. But it's starting to get pretty nice right now. It's just, without an AC and with all the humidity going on right here, you're going to have a bad time.
What is it like for a Swede yourself, coming from a lot of cold, going into Florida where there's a lot of heat? I mean, that must have taken a bit to adjust to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm used to the cold. I've been used to the cold for a long time. Coming to America, I mean, I've been here for like years now, and even back in the Han days, I also lived in Florida for a few months. It's a little bit of an adjustment, but as a Swede, you're gonna have a really good time and you're gonna enjoy yourself. I always told myself, like coming here in the beginning, that I would never stop appreciating the nice weather, because even in like the winter days in Florida can be as hot as the summer days can be in Sweden sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I guess after a while you kind of get used to it and you stop appreciating it as much. But I'm still one of the guys that are just like out by the hot tub and by the pool every single day. So I guess I'm still having some type of appreciation for the nice weather here.
It seems like you guys are good at having a good time. I've always noticed that about Complexity in general. It's safe to say you guys have this camaraderie, almost like you're friends in real life as well as being teammates in game, and so you do a lot of activities together. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extra important in especially nowadays in Dota. There's like tournaments happening all the time. You're playing all the time. You're scrimming a lot, and you have like very little downtime. Like there's gonna be like periods of like a month where you just have 0 days off, like no weekends, no nothing. So when you do get some time off, I think it's super important that you actually do things outside of Dota. Just make sure that you're gonna be able to have some fun along the ride too, because you can easily stress yourself out by just playing Dota all the time. So it's super important to find the time and do team activities like as friends and just not as teammates.
Yeah. Well, you hit around the nail there. I mean, there's been a lot of Dota to play here very recently. But before we get into that, real quickly, I want to go back to last season, really, and how, for you as a player, you were missing in action in a lot of ways, I guess, in a sense where you were dealing with your injury there. You were out for a good amount of last season. What was it like, to not compete last season? What was it like for you as a competitor?
Yeah, I mean, both good and bad, I guess. It's like, I love Dota. I watch Dota all the time. Even if I'm not competing in Dota, in my free time, I'm going to be playing Dota. I'm going to be watching every single match and every single event. I just love the game. And when you watch Dota from the sidelines for a long time, you kind of get that itch to play, especially when I know in the back of my heart that I'm good enough to play at this level. I'm good enough to be making a solid living out of playing Dota, and you just want to be doing that really, really badly. But at the same time, I really needed to take some time off to like reflect and build on my recover from my injuries, probably the right words to use. So I'm still not 100%, definitely not. I still have tons of issues that I'm battling with, which is a ongoing problem for me, unfortunately. But I definitely needed that year off to get my kind of build myself like some tools in battling the issues that I'm fighting.
Okay, so you're still dealing with said injuries to an extent, and you haven't fully recovered. Is sounded like you said right there?
Yeah, I mean, just like the whole last year that I wasn't playing Dota competitively, I was still making a living from streaming and making videos and whatnot. And one of the issues that I faced as a streamer the whole year is that I could never really build that huge viewer base because I could only stream for about 3 hours at a time. Then I would have to stop my stream to not let my pain issues get too bad, which is kind of hard as a streamer. You want to be able to stream for like 8 hours at a time. Because whenever I would get like 1,000, 2,000 viewers, I would always have to shut my stream off. So whenever you do that, it's kind of hard to build like a large viewer base.
So, well, that kind of leads into this now so obviously you felt comfortable enough, though, to be able to start playing competitive again. There's a crazy busy season here, which you've already participated in. What was the deal with Complexity in terms of how did this team come about where you and obviously your brother Limp joined in the roster?
I mean, I had my mindset on starting to play Dota again, kind of when the summer times came around. Back then, Limp was playing with Alliance, and they had the TI qualifiers coming up, and then some stuff happened, and Loda wasn't going to be playing with them in the qualifiers anymore, and they needed like another player to play to fill in the shoes, and I was kind of itching to play Dota back then. And they asked me if I wanted to play with them for Alliance for the TI qualifiers. But I already had made summer plans, and I could not break those summer plans whatsoever. So I declined to play with them. But I already were talking with Limp back then that, hey, let's see like how you guys do in these TI qualifiers. If it doesn't work out, then we can discuss future plans. And TI qualifiers didn't go so well for them. They didn't make TI. And I flew back home to Sweden. I was living with my girlfriend back then. So I flew back to Sweden and spent some time there over the summer. And I was in talk with Limp pretty much all the time about what he was wanted to do, because I knew Limp was the player I wanted to play with. And I just knew Limp is really, really good. So trying to snag him up to be a part of whatever team I was going to be a part of. But Limp had offers that I did not have. So kind of people dragging him left and right. He could have gone to a number of different teams, to be honest. And I had a couple offers, but nothing that really stood out. It's like the offers that I had, I kind of half considered, but I really did not want to take them. I didn't really think that the team would live up to the standards that I wanted to have for this season. But at the end of the day, I just kind of wrote to Cal one day, and I was like, "Hi, Cal, what's up? What are you guys doing? What are you guys gonna do in this upcoming season?" And I ended up sitting in like an hour-long Skype call with Cal, and we kind of came to the conclusion that if we could get Limp to be on board with this team, then we would have Cal play the 5 position and Mo play in the off lane, and that sounded like a really, really strong, good team on paper to me. Mm-hmm. So then the next step was just to convince Limp to stay on the team, and he was kind of on board right away because he also really believed in the team, but at the same time he wanted to take the time to reconsider all of his options, because there was definitely some good teams that were considering Limp to pick up for the roster. But at the end of the day, he just chose to go with us, which we are all really happy for. Trust me about that.
Oh, absolutely, and I can see why. Now, kind of on the idea of him being your sibling, of course, your brother. What is it? Because I know there's having a brother. I'm sure that you have your competitiveness against him, or you want to compete against him, right? Or growing up, I'm sure that might have been a thing. But as far as playing Dota 2, it almost sounds like you would rather be playing with him than against him. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, Limp is one of those players that, I don't know, there's something about him, especially with his laning. Like, I've been playing a lot of high-level pubs in my days of both HON and Dota, and so has Limp. Like, both of us have always been, pushing to get high MMR, being on the top of the leaderboards, playing against each other a whole lot. And if there was one thing that I noticed more and more as we grew older and as we both got better and better at the game, was that he kind of just started becoming a better laner than me over time. And whenever I would match up against Limp in pubs, when you play pubs, you kind of pretty much always have to play the mid role if you really want to be successful in gaining points over time, because that's where you have the most impact on the game from. And so I would match up against Limp quite often in just one-on-one scenarios in the middle lane, and he would just start pulling out ahead of me over time in like one-on-one scenarios. And Limp is like, super, super strong laner. So whenever we would play against each other, he'd probably have like a 70% win rate against me or something, because he would just constantly beat me in lane. I think my late game decisions just kind of might be a little bit better, or on par with him at least. But whenever we were just matched up against each other in the lane, I just knew that he would always come out on top. And you want to have that type of player on your team. There's like select few players in the whole world of Dota that has that, like, I don't know what to call it, but you just feel inferior to them when you're laning against them. Like, some other players that comes to mind would be like specifically Sumail, because he's like one of those. You just play against him in the lane and you just feel bad. Like, the whole time you're laning against him, you feel bad. Abed was the same thing. You just feel like they're so on point with their last hitting and harassment that it just makes it really hard to play against. And Limp is one of those players, and that's one of the type of players that you want to have on the mid lane in your team.
So you've kind of touched on this already a little bit, but maybe go a little bit more into it, where the team the team was announced, obviously going into this very busy season, then going back to when the qualifiers were first starting. What were your expectations personally? Because it's still, obviously you guys have a lot of history together, but it's been a while, you're coming back together. NA, at the time, when, as we've now found out, is a really difficult region. Did you maybe not expect a whole lot off the bat, or were you kind of going into this really confident?
I think we were all pretty confident going into it. The general mindset was to just, let things take its natural course and don't expect too much too early. But since 4 of us had been playing together for so long already, and Moo had already been playing for like a year with Cal and Zach, everything is just kind of a natural fit for us. And it's also kind of a natural fit with like the way that our players want to like control the game. Like, Moo is one of the more playmaking type heroes. He can just, take a Sanking, get level 5 in his lane, and then he just leaves the lane and he just runs at people with tranquil boots. Like, none of me and Limp will do that. Like, we're not that type of player. So having that type of player on our team really helped. And then we kind of just started playing together, and at the first match we played, we felt that, okay, everything is just clicking, everything is going really easy. It was a little too easy almost. We got a little too cocky there. We had like 16 wins in a row without ever losing in the beginning. So it became a meme in our team. Like, okay, we gotta lose soon. We just kind of started memeing in every single scrim, trying to kind of intentionally throw but not throw. We just did some clowny things, and then eventually we dropped the scrim to Immortals, and that was it.
Okay. I know Kyle actually touched a little bit on that at the Starladder LAN this weekend, when in the interview, after you guys had beat Newbie, he made the point, it was like, as far as the pauses went, where he made a point of pause because you guys have a history, I guess you could say, of throwing matches later on after you do get that rolling start early on. It's just inevitably could happen. So, pausing, calming things down, and making sure you guys are on point. But on that note, actually, speaking of Kyle, again, you have a lot of history with him. Kyle has this, or formerly known as Swinnemelons, of course, he has this stigma, this personality, let's say, that, there's some people that love it, there's some people that hate it. Well, obviously, I assume you work out well with Kyle, of course. Why do you think you do work out well with Kyle? What does he do that you like?
I mean, he's just honest and upfront about things, I guess. That's kind of what makes us work pretty well together. Like, whenever something's wrong, we'll always talk about it and we'll always work things out. But at the end of the day, what makes Cal like a good captain and what makes him a good drafter and what makes him like the player you want to have on your team is that he wants to win really, really bad, and you will always see him in a replay, watching drafts, making sure that we know what to do, and he will be the guy that makes sure everyone gets up on time, make sure we all sit down as a team, like half an hour to an hour before a match, talk about drafts, talk about strategy, bring up heroes that we want to play, and just the guy to make sure that we have some structure on the whole thing and not just play Dota.
Yeah. So you guys qualified for Starladder. You then went on to qualify for the Perfect World Minor. So you had a couple of minors you're qualified under your belt. Obviously, a couple of those you fell short on, but again, understandable with this tough region. I don't know, maybe you did expect more, but when those qualifiers happen and you happen to qualify for them, again, kind of taking you back a little bit, but what was your reaction? Did you almost feel relieved? Were you like, this was expected? What was it?
I mean, you always want to win, and you always get relieved when you win. Like we expected to do well right off the bat. We expected to make a couple of these lands. Like I would say everything went kind of as expected. You can't expect to win all of these because the competition in NA is absurd right now. But you just feel, as always, when you win in Dota, when you play for like such high stakes as we do nowadays, you feel very, very happy and relieved for every single win you get.
Do you appreciate the format this year with how much is going on so far? It's still very early on, or is there part of you that's almost a little worried that it's going to be too much? Or, I mean, how is your initial reaction now?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan, I'm going to be honest. It's, especially playing from NA, I feel like it's just super hard to get like a good footing on this whole format right now. The main problem that I have is that, okay, so we have all these qualifiers, right? We play like 8 qualifiers in 2 months or whatever, and some of those are majors and some of those are minors, but the main difference is that every single qualifier that we participate in has the exact same opponents no matter what. So if we make a major or if we make a minor, that's just pure luck. Like, it's all comes down to luck, whether we make the major or the minor. And then to qualifying points for TI, you get like 5 times more points off of the land performances of a major than a minor. So like what really separates a major from a minor when they're all like, or most of them are 8-team tournaments either way, that we play against the exact same qualifying teams to get to it. Like, it makes no sense to me. It just comes down to luck whether you get those like big TI winning points or not.
Yeah, I think that also hit me and maybe a lot of people, and I'm sure yourselves, after you had finished where you did in the Starladder land this week for the minor, you kind of then realize it's like, well, you got, what was it, 30 points, I think, towards the eventual goal, and it's still it's a long season ahead, but yeah, as you point out, when you compare it to the major, it's times 5 the amount. It is quite the separation there, but you still got some money from it. You still got more experience out of it. I mean, I'm sure there are some positives, but I could definitely see where you're coming from, though. As a player with so much happening here. You touched on something where the NA region, very difficult. I mentioned it as well. I mean, I really want to hear again your thoughts on that. Do you think NA is arguably even the toughest region at this point because of how you've been competing against them?
It's hard to say. Like from my standpoint right now, I would say that NA is definitely one of the tougher regions as far as making it to lands, and it's just because it's so top heavy. Like, we have 5 or 6 teams that are really, really strong in this region. I would say that, as always, China is probably the hardest region to make lands in, and Europe is also really hard, but Europe is hard for another reason. Like, Europe is hard because there's like 2 teams that you have to fight against that are really good. NA is hard because there's 6 teams that you have to fight against that are really good. Because in Europe you have Liquid that won TI, obviously, getting invites to like every single LAN, so you don't really have to fight against them at all. And I don't know. I don't want to put us all like on a pedestal and say that NA is like the toughest region. But if we got to play against another region, like let's say we all move to South America, no disrespect to the South American region, that we would be making a lot of LANs if that was the case, 100%.
Yeah, and I don't think you're disrespecting, because frankly it's the truth. I mean, we've talked about that before. It's, SA is obviously still a little more less experienced, I guess. But hell, as we saw, okay, so let's start talking about the Starladder now itself. Obviously, as we saw, Starladder, SG Esports had the early victory there over VG to kick it off. You guys, though, even more impressively, in my opinion, out of the gates, man, 2-0 over Newbie. the TI runner-up team with the same roster and everything. Where the hell did that come from? What did that feel like, beating them 2-0?
Not gonna lie, it felt really, really good. It was huge confidence booster for us. Like we try to have this mindset that we're always gonna win and we're always gonna be the best team and we're always better than our opponents, no matter what. But in the back of your head, when you're coming up against, as you said, runner-up TI, you feel like you're not the favorites. Like in the back of your head, that's always what it's gonna be like. Like at the end of the day, you want to feel good coming into a Dota game. You want to feel like you have a chance to win, because if you don't believe you can win, you're not going to win the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing just like sitting in a drafting phase, like looking over to the other side of the stage, and you see that newbie sitting there, and you see all their names like in the drafting stage, you just instantly feel a little fear coming in there. But then you just kind of take your heroes. If you have a good draft, if you're coming into the game and you feel good about the draft and you feel good about the game, then anything can happen. And it's like you do what you've been doing for so many times for so many years. It doesn't really matter who the opponents are at the end of the day. Like I got to play Visage 2 games, and coming up to that LAN, I was actually playing Visage like 20 times in overthrow, just spamming that hero over and over, and I was smurfing that hero over and over too, because I knew that hero was so good and I needed to learn that hero to like perfection. And then I got to play Visage 2 games, so I just felt like super comfortable right away.
Yeah. No, yeah, that definitely showed there, and there's some interesting stuff that happened. Even with the Chen picks obviously coming out, we see more and more teams, including yourselves, picking that, and that's actually been interesting to me how we're still in the same patch, right, for a long time. Not to bring up a negative topic here, but we've been in this patch for a while. But I also have to think on that note that defeating Newbie with the same patch even that they had at TI and all the success, again, feels that much better on top of that. But you guys, Kyle, as a drafter, I'm sure you guys as a team effort, though, like you mentioned, the Visage carry, the Chen picks coming out. You like to play the Brewmaster quite a bit, Jakiro support. Like these things that he's not afraid to draft differently compared to what other teams are doing. Do you appreciate that about your team and how you kind of have your own flavor of drafting?
Yeah, I mean, everyone brings something to the table. It's not like... It's kind of like you have to convince Kyle really hard. If you believe in something, you have to push for it really hard. Like saying that you want to play a hero, saying that you like something isn't going to get you the hero that you want. Like if you push on this hero day in and day out, if you make sure that Kyle knows that this hero is really, really good, then you're going to be getting to play it no matter what. And then when you get to show what you got, like in a scrim or in a match, then he's going to believe in it right away. And that's kind of how it is with our team. Like Moo is pushing for some certain heroes. Zach is always pushing for some heroes. I'm always pushing for my heroes. Like I always have these niche type of heroes that I really like to play. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, if you do well with these heroes, then I mean, Cal's gonna know. I played like Brewmaster almost, I don't want to say exclusively, but I played him maybe 30 to 40% of my matches from like 8.5k to 9k when I was pushing MMR, and I just realized that this hero is really stupid and really strong, and you win. Like that's a hero that will win you games, and then that's something that I'm just gonna be bringing up to Cal and making sure that I get to play when I want to play it.
Yeah. Now, with the positive of Newbie, and obviously then maybe defeating Na'Vi to advance onto the playoffs there, I do have to bring up the negative of getting knocked out by Mineski. Where do you think things went wrong in that draft, and that being the end of the tournament there?
We all got, I mean, as much as it sucked to lose, we all feel pretty good about it, like now afterwards, because it's one thing if you lose and you have like disagreements on why it happened and you don't really know how to move forward, but we all agree like wholeheartedly why the loss happened. Like right away after the loss, we could pinpoint like this went wrong, this went wrong, we should have done this. And if I should explain it to you like in a real simple, easy way, is that one of the drafts was not so on point, and we didn't feel good coming into the game. We were lacking a couple of stuns. Mm-hmm. More than that, we could, even with the draft at hand, we could have won that the last game that we played, we could have won it. But since we were lacking stuns, we had to play it in a different way that we didn't really recognize at the time. Maybe if we would have taken a pause and changed things up a little bit, it could have worked out. But most of the times when we play kind of timing based. So if we play like Chen and Bloodseeker, for instance, we want to have the Aghanim Scepter up on the Chen and the Radiance up on the Bloodseeker before we actually start making moves as a team. And in a game like that, I think I haven't actually watched the replay yet of that game, but I think we're up like 5 or 4K.
Yeah.
And we could just, if we would have recognized our position a little bit better, we would just have changed things up. So instead of going Ags and Radiance on the Chen and Bloodseeker in that game, we would just have bought like a 4-staff on the Chen and a Blade Mail on the Bloodseeker, and we just have grouped up and kind of ran at them, and that would probably have worked out for us. But we were trying to play this timing-based thing again when they had super superior pick-off potential to what we had, so we just kind of kept dying over and over in different places, and it kind of led to the loss that we got. But it kind of comes down to us having to get a little more experience when we get kind of backed into a drafting corner, because there's always a solution to the problem. But if we don't have stuns, we don't play super well from a bad position.
I can appreciate that answer, because I feel like I could ask that question to so many different players or just people, and a lot of them would just be, pretty simple, like, oh, we drafted bad, or, we just played bad. It's like, okay, well, cool. I mean, not that they have to explain more, but you obviously, made your specific points. And I think that's also just really showing that you guys definitely have a bright future, because you have the right mentality going with these games, learning from your mistakes. And I know that's definitely been the mentality of a player like Kyle and him as a captain, of course, going forward. So that's personally, as of course a Complexity fan, I am happy to hear that. I think that is the right way to think. And I will say, too, your next land now, of course, the Perfect World Miners we talked about, Mineski's going to be there as well, so you're going to perhaps a second chance against them, depending how it plays out. And but you got that to look forward to now. I mean, are you just going to be prepping for that land at this point, or are there other qualifiers coming up? I don't know what's going on here.
I'm going to pull up my schedule right here, but there's definitely other qualifiers. This is actually one of the only times ever since we started playing Dota again this whole season that we're actually going to have some time off, and some much needed time off at that. However, this weekend we do have the WCA America qualifiers for another LAN in China.
That's right.
We're going to be participating in, and it's actually not super stacked, so we expect to do well. There are some teams not participating because of other LANs. I believe that's the PGL going on right now, so we have Optic and EG that are gone. They're not going to be participating in this qualifier. And then for November month, before we actually fly out to the Perfect World Minor, there is Captain's Draft Minor that's a qualifier for. There are Dream League qualifiers, and there are also Summit qualifiers. So we have quite a bit of qualifiers before flying out to the Perfect World Minor. There's going to be a stacked schedule for November. It's just like after this weekend, we have about a week and a half to 2 weeks that we're going to take some time off and wait for the patch.
I was happy I could catch you then during that break before the grind continues once again. You mentioned the patch right there, so before we do wrap it up, I do got to ask, if there's one hero or one gameplay change even that you really would like to see in the patch that's coming up here, what would it be off the top of your head?
I have been advocating for Lina for quite a while now. My team doesn't really believe in Lina, and I truly believe that Limp is one of the most talented Lina players in the world, and I play Lina all the time in my pubs. Like, I think Lina is actually pretty good here. And then we saw Navi break it out like 2 games at the last event too, and they did quite successful with it. And if there's one player that can make Lina work, it's Limp. So if we get a nice little buff on Lina, you're going to be seeing a lot of that hero from our team, I'm sure.
Just bring back the reduced resurrection timer talent on her. And
no, don't do that.
There you go.
Anything but that.
Fix. No, yeah, anything but that, yeah. All right, well, good to hear. Always fun to talk with you, Chessie. Really appreciate it. Any shout-outs? Any final last words we want to say here?
Sure. Shout-out to my mom and my girlfriend. That sounds good, right?
That sounds good.
I think I got my bases covered.
There you go. What about all the fans, Chessie? Where can people find you? On Twitch?
All right, shout out to all of the fans, every single one.
Even
you too, Breaky. You did mention being a fan there earlier.
I know. Did I? Okay. Well, might have slipped.
You can find me on Chessie Dota on Twitter. I'm just mostly on Twitter nowadays. I'm trying to up my Twitter game for this season. I've been feeding Twitter.
I noticed that
ever since we started playing again.
Yeah. Notice the pics coming
in. Yeah,
I
just want to get to that point where I'm like, you have like 50 to 100,000 followers, and you're just like, all right, I need some extra cash this weekend, so I'm just gonna produce a T-shirt and put it up on my Twitter. I'm gonna make like 10 grand. I want to get to that point, you know.
I love it. That's a good point to be at. I would love to be at that point too. Those are good goals to have. All right, Chessie, again though, appreciate it. Thanks for joining me, man, and good luck moving forward.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so now I'm going to be joined by Zrock, of course, and we got plenty to talk about, not only coming up this week, but a little bit of recapping to do. But first things first, Zrock, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Going great.
Happy to have you back once again, and I don't know if you got to watch a lot of the Starladder minor this weekend, but we had our first minor kickoff, so how about that? We got our results from it and everything. Liquid, they follow up TI with another win here to start the season.
Yeah, I actually did get to catch quite a bit of it. Again, just because of the timing and the way other esports were going, I was up late watching stuff from China, flowed right into Starladder. It worked out real well.
Yeah. So, again, Liquid taking it. I already talked about this in the beginning as well, but just to go a little bit further into it, obviously, they had I don't want to say an easy run necessarily in this event, but they looked like the team that had won TI, right? And overall, they only dropped one game, that being in the grand finals, actually the first game against Mineski, but then they won 3 in a row after that to take it 3-1 in that best of 5. So overall, it's safe to say a pretty dominating performance and maybe what we should have expected in the long run.
What I did expect, but yeah, I know, only dropping one game in the entire tournament, that absolutely was a good sign of things to come for the team. Showing they don't have that usual post-TI rust, that even though they haven't been grinding these qualifiers and these other things that these teams have been playing in, they're still looking good.
Well, so on the other side of that spectrum, we had the case of Newbie, of course, where the runner-ups at TI and the run that they had, man, you talk about one of the more interesting results to start the season. Not only that, but even Vici Gaming, yeah, both going 0-2, did not win a single game. China literally went 0-8 in the first minor of the season, and one of the teams being Newbie on top of that. What the hell are we supposed to make of this?
I mean, one of the things I did harp on was, I talked a lot about how when EG won TI 2 years ago, how CDEC, a great team in that tournament, just bombed afterwards. It seems to be a Chinese tradition at this point, that you do really well, and then go do a high placement at TI, and then after that, you just crumble. And usually it's a result of a meta shift, but yeah, Newbie just got manhandled in roughly the same patch since TI.
Well, of course, so their loss was to Complexity to kick it off, which obviously, that was something. I actually had woke up at 6 a.m. to watch that match. I didn't know if I was going to be able to, but my alarm goes off. My wife is like confused as hell. She's like, wait, what's going on? I'm about to wake up. Why are you up? I'm like, I got to watch my boys' Complexity. So go in the living room.
You.
Yeah,
I texted
you did.
You. I'm like, are you up for this?
Yeah. Well, because you stayed up during the night. You didn't even go to sleep. So
no.
Yeah, I tried to get some sleep. But anyway, so woke up for that, and I'm glad I did, obviously, because I got to see my boys defeat Newbie, and it pretty handily, too. Newbie just seemed confused by what Complexity was doing. Although Complexity does play different than a lot of other teams, to be fair, but yeah, they seemed flat, and then they go 0-2 against a very good Secret team, of course, but so I don't know if I want to overreact, but man, they better have a nice follow-up event here of what is the major, I believe, or else I don't know what to think.
I'm going to be honest, like game 1, they manhandled Newbie pretty hard. Game 2, I thought Newbie had that game so hard in the bag that I fell asleep about 30 minutes in. Because Newbie was crushing that game, and Call's lineup does not scale very well. And they were running Core Visage with a Death Prophet mid. I'm like, oh, they're down like 12,000 gold. I'm going to go to bed. And I fell asleep, and I woke up, and I'm like, wait, Call won that game? And I had to pull up the replay and just see it. I mean, it was insane. But yeah, then Newbie, as you said, they got manhandled by Secret. Like, that wasn't even a series.
So sticking with Complexity here real quickly, obviously they had a very successful... Well, I mean, come on. It's worth it. It's worth it. They won the group. They won Group B. I did not expect that. I thought they were going to come out of it, as we talked about last week, but I thought I was going to be behind Newbie, actually. Go figure, that didn't happen. They come out on top. They go to the playoffs. Then they lose, however, in the first round to Mineski, 2-1, thus knocking them out because obviously it was a single elimination playoff stage. Simply put, I mean, do we think Complexity can be satisfied with the result? I mean, talk about a high and then a low, unfortunately, getting knocked out there.
No, you can absolutely be happy with that result. You beat the runner-up at TI, who honestly not showing that great right now, but nevertheless. Then you beat Na'Vi. Again, they kind of had a fairly nice run. That first series set them up to a pretty nice run in this whole tournament because they beat Newbie, then they get Na'Vi instead of Secret. They win that, then they go on to play Mineski, who was probably the weakest team in the bracket phase, let's be honest. As far as the other two they could have drawn. And you didn't win that one. It was a pretty good series. You went back and forth with the games. You managed to bring it to a game 3, but you still get your points because they finished top 4. You got a good chunk of money out of this. I think they've got to be fairly happy with how this ended up, honestly.
Yeah, I am with you there. Definitely think they got to be overall satisfied because, like you said, they got points out of this, albeit not the most points. It is a minor after all, but it's still something. They got something out of it. But man, it was if you told me they're gonna play Na'Vi, Newbie, and Mineski, and I'd be like, and which one are they surely gonna win? It would be Mineski, right? I would definitely feel confident going up against Mineski compared to the other two. So, it was a different day after all. They had a little bit of a break. Whatever it was, obviously, they had trouble and ultimately got knocked out. But again, it is a single elimination, so you really can't look too much into it either as well when it comes to a result like that. So, I
mean,
do,
the last
I do
game, I don't want to say they got cheesed, but they got tinkered. Like, it just happens some games. If you get last pick tinkered, you just lose to it sometimes. And it sucks. It happens. But the one thing I'm a little bit concerned about is this was Complexity's like one shot, right? It was the only thing they qualified for in the first wave of tournaments. They had a hell of a showing. I think top 4 is very, very respectable. But now they have a lot of waiting. There's not really much going on for them for the next month. And that kind of wait can hurt. Especially somebody as hype and tempo based to Swindle, where he likes to ride the emotion train up, and if they're doing well, they're really doing well. It's going to be hard for him to have to watch this from the backlines and not be involved in the next couple tourneys.
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously we had Chessie on here just before this and talking with him about how there's actually finally a little bit of a break that they get, which almost feels kind of weird, but they actually get a break from Dota 2 because of how much has been going on. But yeah, that could also be seen as bad as you're getting at. They're not playing in a lot of these lands coming up. Now, obviously, they did qualify for the Perfect World minor, but it's a little bit away. It's next month here, but that's something else to look forward to a little bit down
And this
the
is
line,
the part where, like, when we're talking way back when this lineup was making big showings, when basically Moo was replaced by Hanskin back in the day, it seemed very, like, dichotomous. Like, there were two totally opposite groups in this. You had, like, Chessie and Z-Freak are the more mellow, we like to chill, take things slow kind of people. Limp Hanskin and Swindle Melons will just go nuts. Like, they love riding the hype train, they love being busy. When they're at lands, they just like going nuts after they lose. They like to have a good time. It's interesting to see how the team like gels together on a social construct and how, somebody like Chessie's going to enjoy the break, but I think it's going to just kill Swindle.
That's a good point, actually. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how they manage. But all right, this isn't a complexity podcast here, despite what we sometimes do with myself. It's a little bit, and I don't mind that. But there are viewers or listeners even tuning in. I have gotten messages about it. It's like, despite your NA bias and complexity fanboyism, I still like to listen to the show. I'm like, oh well, thank God.
I mean, if a team wants to make us fanboys of them, they can send jerseys.
That's right. That's the way to do it. It's complexity me up. I mean, if you want to be, there you go. Yeah. Full sellout right there. All right, so how about the team that they did lose to, obviously, in Mineski? Mineski, again, it's not that I didn't expect much out of them ultimately, but
I didn't expect this out of them.
Getting into the finals and even taking a game off of Liquid.
Like, in the pre-show last week, obviously my predictions were not right, but I did say that the second slot in Group A was going to be all question marks. I had no idea who was going to take it. Mineski managed to squeeze through. It was a very, very hard fought way there. I mean, they finished with the worst record they could and still advance. And I like what they did here. I mean, they squeezed through the group. They got the easier draw in the, by where they finished because Complexity won their group. Like, I'm just reimagine this tournament with Secret winning the group and Complexity getting second. It looks very different. Like, then all of a sudden you have Mineski playing Secret, Complexity playing Liquid. We probably get a Secret Liquid final. I think they've got to be very happy with how they ended up, and they've qualified for so much going forward. I think they're going to really love this momentum. I mean, making the grand finals of the first minor's got to be uplifting for, I know Jabs especially has been down on himself. He's had posts on Reddit that have leaked out that he just doesn't feel like he's good enough sometimes. And no, I really think this is great for them. I was very impressed with the way they played. I think mentally it's a good step going forward.
Yeah, it's a lot of point going from 3rd/4th in this case to 2nd place. That's 90 points compared to 270 points that were wait. No. Okay, I was looking at something I was going to say. That seemed a little too ridiculous. So it's 90 points compared to 30 points.
That's the same thing. It's a factor of 3.
It's a factor, times 3 essentially. And that's kind of weird because I am looking at I have this. So there's this on Dota Buff. They actually have a pro circuit section that I found out about. Yep. That's like keeping track of the stuff. But for some reason, it says the points are different than what they. Wow, it has Liquid getting 450 points already. That makes no sense.
Yeah, okay. No, that's right. Every player gets 150.
Oh, wait. Does that still make sense then?
Yeah.
No.
150. And then every player on Complexity gets 30.
It's max 3.
Yeah, you only get to use 3 of them for TI.
Okay.
But what they're going to do is keep all this in case, like, Kuro needs to be subbed out for a tourney, then they're still going to have all of the cumulative points. And eventually, as we get closer to TI, it'll drop to just the top 3. But
got it.
It's just a way to keep a running total while roster shuffle and everything like that. To know who's
okay, yeah. Did a glance at this, and I'm like, that makes a lot more sense, though. Gotcha. All right, cool. But yeah. Point is, yes, it's, again, times 3 the amount of points just because you beat Complexity in that round and then moved on to the final. So obviously they would have liked to win it all for both money and points on top of that. But yeah, if you're Mineski, and also in the sense that this definitely, I mean, I don't know if you feel differently, but I think it does earn a little more respect for the region of Southeast Asia. Mineski, of course, being from there. And, we've maybe been a little bit down on that region to an extent, with the lack of success from teams like Fnatic and Mineski kind of only being the one team that really is shining right now. But perhaps that means something, right?
It keeps them in the same spot I've had them in for a long time. It's a dark horse region. The team that qualifies can make a miracle run. We've seen TNC do it. We've seen Fnatic do it. Old Fnatic. I don't think it means they're even a top 3 region right now, but they can consistently produce a team that can do something, which is a good spot to have. I mean, they're always a wild card coming into these tournaments.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, how do we feel about the points now? Because we were just talking about that. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up, because for me personally, now that we had our first minor in the books here, we're good to go. I mean, maybe we'll have to revisit this once we have our first major as well. But man, 30 points for 3rd, 4th compared to 150 for a major. And then even in first place case, you get, 150 points compared to 750. So yeah, times 5 as we're talking about. It feels weak, right? Like that. It feels like it's a little too small, honestly. For now that we've had our first minor, it feels like a little too insignificant. And I understand that, as you've always suggested, that's kind of what it's supposed to be, and maybe it's supposed to be for these tier 2, tier 3 teams, whatever. But it's not right now, and I don't know. It just feels off to me at this point.
I mean, I love it because of 2 things. As I said, I like this being a separate tier where eventually, especially if Liquid wins the next major, they don't have a lot of reason to ever play another minor. They really don't. But what it can do is those teams that are hovering on the 7th, 8th place bubble, right at the edge of invites, and they need another 150 points. Maybe they go play one more. I like what it's going to do, as it's almost, I feel like the minors are meant to be more of a tiebreaker than they are a point earner. And I also think we can't look too heavy into the points, because I think these results are going to set the stage for the next couple majors and who they invite. Yeah. We may see Mineski even get a direct invite to the next minor or the next major, and that's the kind of stuff that I think the minors need to be used for. And I think these points really shouldn't hold too much weight.
That's fair, and I guess it's something too that we have to. It's something that we're going to be able to see better later on in the season, where maybe a team will choose to play that minor, as you're saying, because it'll be just enough to get them over if they happen to finish first or second or whatever in said event. So it maybe seems small right now, but perhaps down the line it'll become more significant.
So the one big caveat I've got is that there are no minors post May. So the teams that end up just not playing TI, they're too far off in the points race, whatever you want to say. We've got 3 majors back to back to back pre-TI. There's not going to be that tiebreaker minor. There's a lot of dead time. And all in all, that's like 4 to 5 months that teams that aren't playing in TI are going to have to wait to play another tournament.
Yeah. Very true, very true. All right, yes, again, we'll just have to kind of wait and feel it out as the season goes on. But and I have been even talking with Chessie earlier. He did make the point, and I get it, right, because of how much grind you're putting into all these events and everything. And yes, you get a little bit of money out of it too. But again, just seeing that point value is just kind of like after all of that effort and work, and it's like, did it really mean much? But down the line, it may. So, gotta give it some time here.
I mean, they got $30,000. For 4th place in any tournament that wasn't a major before that was great money.
Well, that's true.
All in all, that's the point thing. I think has skewed a lot of people's opinions on what a tournament is and what the tournament's value is. But it's exposure. Now they're going to have a chance to get more sponsors because they made a big LAN. And there's so many things that can fall in place because of how well they did that you can't just go off the point value.
Yeah. All right, and then one last thing I wanted to touch on for the Starladder event before we move on is unfortunately a little bit of a negative thing, but there was a massive uproar on Reddit, etc., and I gotta say I do see where they're coming from on this. That being the observer for the event, let's just say I'm notorious for missing first blood kills. I get it. As a cast, it's fine. But the first minor of the season, man. There was a lot of kills that were missed on camera, this constant zooming out. I will say, just to make it clear on this whole thing, where apparently the observer, he was going off of the Russian casters for the first couple of days, so that's why for the English stream it may seem a little off sometimes, but at the same time he was still missing kills, and whether you cast for the Russians or the English stream, that necessarily shouldn't be happening. And then on top of that, we found out later that apparently he was a observer that had a background in CSGO, but not necessarily Dota 2. So we don't know even necessarily a lot more than that, but it sounds like that this is a case where, whether he was somebody's buddy or just somebody that they happen to know quickly that they could pop on observing for the event, it showed, though, that he was lacking in experience. And for minors and majors especially, I think it's important that you got to have that taken care of, right? So,
but that's part of the issue. Okay, so there's 2 sides of this that I want to bring up. One of which is some games do only have one observer across all of their casts, multiple languages, everything like that. They all go off that one. It's just a different casting style, and we're not used to that. Our casting talent is not used to either not being able to observe their own game or not having someone speak English in their ear that they can guide somewhere. I know CSGO's done it before. I know like LCK, especially for League, they go only off of the Korean studio and cast over top of it. It's just a very different style. And the guys that cast now are not used to it. They're not trained in it. And it's very hard to deal with if you're doing something you're unfamiliar with. And at the same time, we've got a huge drought of observers. We really only have 3 known observers in Dota 2, Wepis, Scriff, and Pimp. And if that's all you have and they can't make it, what do you expect? But that's a situation that we've put ourselves in because no tournament's willing to pay for an observer. Like, other than TI and a small handful of tournaments outside of that, these cameramen either don't get utilized or they get a free trip and don't really get paid. So that's not conducive to a competitive environment. So either we need to start putting more weight on observers, and when we have even qualifiers paying an observer a couple bucks to do a game, or we have to pay enough of a premium to always get the big 3.
It's ridiculous when you think that they're not given more, or they're not pushed for more for it to be a staple as you're getting at, because really, it would just be like the equivalent of like a traditional sport, them not paying their cameramen that are showing it, on the television, right? Because that's essentially what it is. It's arguably the most, you could have an observer without casters. You cannot have casters without an observer in the sense of nothing to look at, right? I mean, I guess, Zyuri tried that whole audio just only cast a long time ago, which is kind of cool to be fair, but it's like a radio cast. But point is, we're talking about live streaming here and what was known for observing these events. If you're not able to see that action, it completely depletes, what the feel of the event as a whole. So yeah, it really is ridiculous to me. Definitely jumping on the bus with you that these events aren't making it more of a priority to make sure that they do have these dedicated observers.
I mean, this is an
events.
issue that echoes through the entire scene, though. It's not just observers. An organization as big as Starladder, I know when they were they were the ones running WESG. They got contracted out for that. And their tournament admins, their people they had running around helping the teams and stuff, were essentially volunteers. Mm-hmm. Like, you've got to budget in for the staff you need to make an event run. If that means your $500,000 tournament has to become $450,000 or $400,000, do it. Because we're seeing some of these effects, and I'm kind of glad this happened, because this is a ripple effect that needs to get brought up, needs to get acknowledged, and the staff that you need to make a tournament run properly need to get in the scene. They need to get paid well enough. They need to actually have a job.
That's a great point to bring up, too, at the end, that it's almost good that this did happen at the very beginning, right? The very first minor of the season, that, yeah, it's going to set the standard now. Okay, we need to make sure to have the one up on that, and that we actually do have that dedicated observer, making sure that that's taken care of. So we'll see with the PGL event here coming up, if that's addressed or how much it is. And okay, well, speaking of that, kind of transitions, I guess, pretty nicely into the next minor now. And in fact, it has already started as we're doing this recording here. It started earlier today on what's a Thursday. So by the time you hear this even, I'm sure we'll even be a couple of days into it. But the PGL Open Bucharest, taking place now, again, our second minor of the season. This is an event where Liquid is not at. Instead, EG and LGD were, of course, the invited teams. You also then have Immortals, Infamous, Secret, Navi, Mineski, and VGJ Thunder. So we already previewed it last week on the show, so we don't really necessarily need to do that. However, there's a couple of updates as we've now started the event. A pretty big one being LGD is playing with a stand-in, actually. Victoria, normally their support player, the 5 support player, he's actually wasn't able to make it. It's something, a pancreatitis or acute pancreatitis?
Yep.
Something like that, yes.
Pancreatitis.
We'll go with that, okay. So he's being replaced by a player named QQQ in the end here. So that's an unfortunate circumstance. Not often we have a health condition holding somebody back from an esport event, but it can happen, as we see here. But it did not stop LGD from getting out of Group A, as they went 2-0 in Group A.
Yeah, I mean, they got out of their group with a stand-in, only dropped one game that secures them top 4 already. So very, very impressive showing, just bringing someone new in and honestly having a hell of a showing already.
Yeah. Immortals also looking fairly strong. They actually 2-0 Team Secret in their opening match, and for both of us, that's not a good start because we both predicted Secret to win this event in last week's podcast show. So already a little bit worried. They play Infamous
I think
next.
I had Secret Immortals getting out of that one. So definitely one of those two is going to be wrong.
Yeah. Who are you leaning towards more at this point?
I want to see Immortals. Secret should beat Infamous. I don't think that's really going to be that close of a series. And then you have Immortals Secret. I'm sticking with my guns. I'm going to say Immortals because I like the team. My heart says Immortals. My head says Secret.
Okay. I'm still going to go with Secret. Again, the fact that I picked them to win it, I need that to happen, man. So I'm going to say Secret still if I had to put a guess on it. What about Mineski? Over there in Group B, so obviously we talked a little bit about them from the Starladder event, how they proved to have overall a great showing. They got to the finals, even took the first game off of Liquid. Does Mineski have a lot to prove here? Are they? Should we expect more out of them in this event, or is this going to just be, if they happen to get knocked out of the groups, is it like, oh, well, they're a fluke all of a sudden?
Again, I said before, I feel like Southeast Asia is always a dark horse type team. I don't think there's a lot of expectations out of them. If anything, Mineski might have a few more than some of the other teams there just because of Ice 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 and how prolific he is, how active he is on Reddit. You know, he's just very involved with the community. But I don't think it would be a big shock if they don't make it out of the group.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, of course, they play Na'Vi actually first. EG versus VGJ Thunder is the matchup also in that group. And again, that's VGJ Thunder, the Chinese team, not the American squad, just to clarify. So the Chinese team got Sylar, Freeze, Yang, Fade, and Io with ROTK.
You can't forget their coach.
Coach, yep, of course. Classic ROTK. Yeah, and this is the event, that's right, where Infamous replaced DC South America.
Yep.
And going into this, so as we discussed last week. So not much else to talk about this event. Again, next week's show we'll recap and see how it ultimately finished off there. But one other thing though before we move on was that the studio looked pretty badass, that they're doing the streaming from there and everything. I believe it's more of a closed studio, of course, that they got with PGL, but
it's very bright.
It's very bright. There's a lot going on. I do agree there. There's a lot going on.
It's a little gaudy for me, but it does look cool.
They put effort into it.
Yeah, they did. They did for sure.
So that's kind of a fun, nice perk of that event as well. But yeah, our second minor of the season. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, I have Secret LGD. You had Secret EG as your top two. I mean, you can't change them now, but are you still feeling...
I still think EG's got it.
You think EG, yeah.
Yep. I still have faith in my boys in blue.
Okay. I don't. I do not.
Ouch.
I think EG's getting knocked out of the groups. Okay, that might be too bold of a statement. No.
That's bold.
That's pretty bold. Na'Vi did look good last week, though, man. I mean, Eski had that run. Who knows? Man, that's... EG has something to prove here, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
This event, so we'll see. By the time people listen to this, I'll either look pretty stupid or pretty... smart, either way. We'll see. All right, so that's the PGL Bucharest. We got some previewing to do now of our first major of the year, finally. ESL 1 Hamburg. It kicks off next week. It actually starts on next Thursday. So by the time, on the 26th there, November 26th, or October 26th, excuse me. Whatever month we're in here. So we got 8 teams, of course, the invited being Liquid and Newbie. We have Secret, Virtus Pro, Keen Gaming, Evil Geniuses, SG Esports, and wait a second, what is this? Fnatic? Fnatic out of Southeast Asia? Yeah, you want to explain what happened, or?
Happy Feet couldn't get visas. Fnatic's a bunch of foreigners that are there on visas. It kind of works. It honestly was a pretty crappy situation. Happy Feet was your qualifier. Happy Feet had, I believe, multiple people not able to get visas, and did have to cede their slot.
Apparently, well, so from what I could tell, they were able to get the visas eventually, but by the time they were going to get them, it was just going to be too late. It was going to be after, even during the event, basically. So.
And I did say this. When I saw how long these qualifiers were waiting to finish, I specifically said visa issues are going to start becoming an issue because we have a lot of these up-and-coming teams, a lot of these people trying to make these bigger tournaments. And especially, I know when I tried to get some teams to Sao Paulo for WESG, I literally had an open invite. Starladder said, get me 5 Americans with a passport and a visa and we can do it. And I couldn't find 5 players with a passport that could get a visa turnaround in 2 weeks. Like, it's difficult. It's extremely difficult if the infrastructure is not in place already and if this hasn't been done ahead of time. And especially for somebody that's not in a major organization like Happy Feet, they don't have the resources to just pay for a passport and a visa out of pocket on the hopes they get there.
This is where you'd hope the organizer that's putting on the event would be a lot more. Again, who knows how helpful they were. Maybe they were and it just still didn't work out in ESL in this case, but that's almost should be their obligation, right? Like they should have to assist with them.
But at what point do they do it? Because they would have had to start doing this for every team in the qualifiers to get it done in time. Like that's the issue.
Yeah,
like this needed to be done a week or two before the qualifier, basically.
Yeah, Goes back to the scheduling of that. So, okay, so you're talking about, so you bring great logic, of course, Zach, but was this the right team to replace them? Like you said, it's because of the visa, like they already have that taken care of, they're well-traveled, yada yada. But is that fair for the integrity of this event that Fnatic was able to make it, despite them getting knocked out in the semifinals by Clutch Gamers even, who then lost to Happy Feet in the finals?
I don't know. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, and that's why I don't want to make a big statement about this. Maybe they asked Clutch, and Clutch was in the same situation. Because at the moment, the way I can imagine this went was Happy Feet tells ESL, hey, we can't get visas in time. Mm-hmm. And ESL said, all right, well, we're, 2 weeks out of the tournament? A week out? Yeah, a week now. Start running down the list. Happy Feet, you guys got 5 people with visas to Germany? Nope. All right. Next. Like, Fnatic and maybe Mineski would have been the only 2 teams out of that region, I think, that would have had them ready to go.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about that, obviously, there was a lot of reaction for that Mineski should have been the deserving team, and clearly they have a large fan base. They've had great success, of course, as we're just talking about here. But they did lose to Fnatic in the quarterfinals of the qualifiers. So there is that to take in consideration as well, where if they perhaps were leaning towards Mineski, that might have been, like if they invited Mineski over than Fnatic, then you're like, wait a second, you invited a team that got knocked out in the quarterfinals over a team that beat them. So I would not be surprised if that actually did come up for ESL here, and that's why they ultimately went with Fnatic in the end. But,
well, a big part of it is just the fact that when you look at the list of players here, like, you don't even need a visa if you're in the EU to travel around Germany. So Pilot Eye and Excalibur already there. Envy, I know, has spent some time playing over there, so his is valid. I'm sure they literally just already had valid visas. That had to be the biggest caveat here that was stopping the rest of the teams they may have asked.
Absolutely. So you are right. We do not have inside information, so we are going off what you guys know as well. What's released to the public. But point is, deserving, but in the end, it's understandable that they went with this team here.
And this is going to be interesting because we've talked about Fnatic being a pretty big disappointment with what was supposed to be the super team for the region. And
yeah,
all in all, they've stacked up pretty well against international competition in the past when they were NP. Obviously a different roster, but I'm really curious to see how they do outside of the region.
Talk about a chance to really prove themselves. You know, if they happen to do well here, if they get to the playoffs, I mean, all of a sudden our perspective and a lot of people's perspectives change. But they're definitely handed an opportunity here. And, you know, that must put pressure on them, but they better make the best of it. So here they are. Now, speaking of that, they're in a Group A. They belong in Group A with Evil Geniuses, Newbie, and Team Secret. Tough one there. And then you got Group B, which is Keen Gaming, the team that qualified out of China, of course, that surprise team. Still, every time I say that, man, I'm just thinking, like, what? With Keen Gaming. Keen Gaming, Team Liquid, SG Esports, and Virtus Pro are in Group B. So, doing the eye test here right away, I think it's pretty obvious, but which way do you lean towards
Secret,
tougher group?
Liquid VP.
So
tougher group?
Okay.
Probably Group A.
Yeah. I would say Group A. Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. But so you were getting at which two are going to make it out of both. You're pretty confident right there.
I mean, Newbie bombed the last tournament. They looked bad.
They did, yeah.
And EG, we haven't seen anything out of yet, so I can't make too bold of a prediction, but Fnatic didn't make it out of their own qualifiers. And, like, it looks pretty... I like the seeding of the groups. I think it's a good set of groups. I wouldn't have changed anything in this. Mm-hmm. But... yeah, looking rough.
It's pretty difficult for the Group B more so. I think Liquid and Virtus Pro is an absolute lock. Like SG Esports, now we said that, but again, SG Esports they had a solid start in the Starladder. They beat VG Gaming. Now as we kind of going off of that whole newbie idea, China in general, they had a poor showing at their first one. What about this actually? Going on the topic of China here in general, I mean, does China need to have a big result here? Like, say if Newbie and Keen Gaming, which would be more expected, do not make it out of groups, are we all of a sudden in panic mode about China? Like, what's going on, man? Because obviously they had a horrible result of Starladder, PGL. They got LGD so far, so I guess that kind of evens it, sorta. But what do you think about that?
I mean, I've been waiting for the fall of Eastern Dota for a long time, and it just never happens. So I don't know. I mean, it's just a trend we've seen year after year. They do really well at TI, they fade off after it, then they start coming back mid next year. I'm not too worried if China underperforms here. I don't think it's going to affect the whole lot going forward.
Is this a fair format now? Because
No,
I know
this format's awful.
Yeah, we've talked about this
for majors.
Exactly. With minors, this makes sense. It makes more sense. It's more to the point. Again, especially with what is on the line, it's good. But for a major, it does feel really bad. Yep. It doesn't feel right.
A major should have multiple chances. It should have a wider spread of teams you play. It should really test your skill against the entire field. And this kind of format, if you lose your bracket, you only play 3 of the 7 teams. Mm-hmm. That feels really terrible. I really want to see something like Swiss into a double elimination bracket. Something along those lines would be a more fair way to do it, I think. But with an 8-team major, there's not a lot of formats you can even use. I think this is probably the best you can do with an 8-team format. But, I don't like it.
Honestly, I would rather almost rather see just a straight up double elimination tournament at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
Yeah, because at least that makes it so, when you do get further down, like we're going to have possibly a Liquid versus EG semifinals. And then it's like, well, one team gets knocked out. They didn't have a chance to play VP or Team Secret or whatever, to go to the finals. Like, that's just it.
And format integrity for a major has to be paramount because these are the points that do matter. These are the ones that will determine whether or not you make TI. We've shown, like, Valve got rid of the time decay idea with points, so winning this major is just as important as winning the 1-2 before TI. Mm-hmm. So I really don't like this format. I think it's very, very bad with the way points are going to be distributed, and I think it's almost a travesty to not have a major figure out who's 3rd or 4th place, given how many points are at stake.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but that's a really good point. And that's something else, again, that double elimination would also help settle with the format right there. So, man, it does make... I just really would love to be, fly on the wall or just curious to hear
ESL's
the thought
pitch to
process. Yeah, of like, when did they talk about this format and how did it really come... When was that decision made that, oh yeah, this is a great idea. A 4-team single elimination playoff bracket after a simple group stage. Like... This is the major, man. This is the first major of the year, and then we have this. It feels anticlimactic. It feels wrong, and as you're getting at, when there's so much on the line, especially with the points, and if you're going to be doing this, maybe we do have to make the points a little closer, between minors and majors, because it is a little unfair, it seems like, but...
Yeah. I mean, I was all for the idea of trying an 8-team major, but they needed to find a format that was more inclusive, that had more stages to it. Like, the problem with just doing double elim is you end up exacerbating the issue that I already said is one where you don't play enough teams. If you get, you lose 2 series and you're out, you only got to touch 2 teams in the entire field. Mm-hmm. And I really want to see in the majors where you're playing at least 4 or 5 of the 7 teams.
Yeah. Well, the format's sticking. So with that in mind, now the ultimate question of who do we think is going to be top 2 in this event? You've already given your confident getting out of group stages, but now what is your finals looking like and who wins it?
I'm still taking EG Liquid.
So EG Liquid finals. So you mean EG and Liquid will probably be 1-1 in their groups.
They're going to win out their group and they're going to, meet in the finals.
Meet in the finals there. Okay. And then who in the finals?
I'll still take Liquid. They look good. They looked real good.
Okay. I was, just to be also different, I was leaning towards this as well. I'm going to go with a VP Secret finals right there. So I think...
so the two seeds out of their group?
No, I'm going to pick Secret to win Group A, and then...
Then you need VP to win Group B.
I know... No, wait, what? No, Secret would win, and then Virtus Pro would be second. And
No,
you're
they're
right.
in different
No,
groups.
you're right. Yeah. Oh, I didn't think about. God, this stupid single elimination. Dumb. Going back to that. Sure. I'll still stick with it. I'll just say VP wins the group though. So Secret and VP will both win their group, and then we got.
And they don't have to for the prediction. If they both get second, they meet in the finals.
Whatever,
then
yeah.
there you go.
That doesn't count for the prediction, but just as long as they meet in the finals. And then we got VP over Secret in the finals.
All right.
VP's coming out swinging here in the majors. I'm going to take it. All right, so, yeah, we got different ones there. Make sure to put that down on my sheet. I haven't showed you this yet, have I? I am going to be keeping track. Here.
Nice.
Throughout this whole
By the
year,
way,
so.
since we did harp on observers, they aren't bringing Wepis and Scrift to the major.
Yeah, they are. That's good. Knoxville's going to be there for stats as well.
Yep, they're not bringing those two. They're only bringing Pimp Munkle and then Buka, who is a newer observer. Yeah, we're not going to have the main two that we usually have at TI at the first ever major. I think Pimp is a great observer. The work he's done on the back end has been insane for Dota. I mean, he's brought so many things. Lareth was amazing, but you can't solo observe. Yes, they're bringing in Buka, but obviously not as known as the other two that are being left off this list. And I'm not sure why they're not coming, but might hurt a little bit.
Well, I hope he is Dota 2 experienced. That's a start. I'm sure he is. Yeah, no, because when you're saying that, I was just thinking you were talking about, because I know I saw Scriff and Weapons at an event. They're actually at PGL Open right now. That's where they're at currently. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like that should have been an issue. I mean, you figure that's close enough, especially. They could have just gone there fast, but yeah, maybe something came up. Who knows? So, but that's
and
a good
it
point.
Might be a little bit of a nod because Pimp Munkle is German.
That's fair. That's fair.
Speaks the language of the people around. You can get stuff done.
That's actually really good. But I would not be surprised. That definitely helps too. And again, Pimp Munkle's a great guy. I do. Yeah, I am glad to see him there. I think you are right though on the other one. He'll have something to prove. We'll see.
Yeah, he's done some work with Moonduck before, so I'm assuming it's just they got Pimp, who was with Moonduck, and Buka came with him as a package.
Brought him on.
I don't know. It's all speculation, but either way, just wanted to point that out.
That's what we do here. Speculate. All right, so we got our ESL major preview in the books now. Our predicted teams. We'll see which one of us is right. If any. Who knows? Maybe we'll have like a Fnatic versus Keen finals or something. Could just blow everything out of the water. Moving things on. By the way, you're getting a little robotic again. Don't know if that's the Zencaster here or you. There we go. Think we fixed it. We'll just keep this one going. Happens every once in a while. All right, so as I was talking about, though, the WESG. This is an event that's always kind of fun every year. A very unique event.
Hello.
Of course.
Hello.
Yeah, you do sound better now. Good. So, as I was just getting in, so the WESG is another event worth at least just kind of mentioning right now because there are these qualifying stages going on. Very unique event. How this works, this is the whole nationality-based event where it's very unique because it's not your typical teams. They have to all be from the same region, specifically, and then they have to, face off in each of those regions qualifiers, each of those countries qualifiers even, who then advance on to a region-based qualifier, who then, the top teams from that then, of what is a LAN in itself, go to the main event LAN to then compete for a $1.5 million prize pool. A lot of money on the line. This is quite the spectacle.
Let's talk about a Chinese bias tournament, huh? I mean, what other country pretty much only has players of their own country? It doesn't exist. This is, I mean, I'll share my thoughts because I was very, very involved with this last year. The the US qualifier had about 8 teams in it. And IX Mike Stack managed to qualify out of it. Basically, you took the Canadians and the US people, and they just kind of shuffled teams to make teams. The Canadian qualifier last year, I believe, had 4 teams in it total. And they were bringing 2.
Nice.
So it was just a total cluster. the teams that qualified didn't even go. They're like, we don't want to worry about this. There was another tournament that was like, there was a major qualifier. I think it was Boston. Was Boston the winter major? Or Kiev?
No, Boston was winter, yes.
Okay. Yeah, the Boston major had like its open qualifiers the next week or something. So all of the North American teams that did qualify for this just backed out. I worked real closely with Starladder. He said, we just want teams. It's like, get me enough people, as long as they're from wherever. And I couldn't do it. I could not get 5 people willing to go play in it was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and it was like $60,000 or $70,000 for the offline prize. I couldn't get anyone to go for that. And then if they made top 4 there, they qualified for China. It was insane. I mean, then the Chinese teams were insanely good. I mean, it was just a disaster. Like, it is so stacked for China that this tournament's just bizarre.
Well, okay, so you're bringing up about China. Now, I will say last year, China didn't send the best teams.
No, Mineski won it last year, right? Or somebody?
TNC won it last year.
TNC, okay. I knew it was an SCA team.
But as far as the Chinese teams that were there, because I'm going through right now, it was a team called Dubao Young, and God, was there even another team? That's the only team. What the hell?
Look at the Chinese qualifier. They didn't want to play it because of that major that was coming up at the time.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about. Okay, so because of the whole scheduling conflict there.
Yeah. I mean, there's no one on this list that when I'm flipping through the China major or Chinese qualifiers that I even know. Okay. And then you had teams like C9. I want to say I'm trying to remember what caused them to go. I think the qualifier for Europe might have been the week before or something. They were able to play that in conjunction because we had a lot of good Europe teams last year. You had Horde, Alliance.
Yeah, there was actually quite a bit.
Yeah.
The team Ukraine was actually pretty decent. Resolution, Dendi, General.
That was
Always
pretty
want to fly.
solid.
They did not make it to the playoffs. Somehow they did not actually qualify for the top 12. But
just look at this tournament. You have like 24 teams. And
I know, it's ridiculous.
It was like round robin for your group. It was just an asinine number of games.
I don't know. It's impressive that they actually made it through. Yeah, and all these teams going to a LAN, like that is something. It's like I said, it's a skeptical. It really is a show. Like this is the equivalent of what's the Olympics, right? To an extent of
that was what
in the
going
esports
for,
world. Yeah, and I mean, I think they pulled it off okay. It's definitely. I don't know if this format will ever truly work in the esports world, just for a lot of reasons, but I can appreciate an organization trying to do it, at least, right? Like,
where it would work?
It does feel kind of good. What's that?
Any game that's one-on-one. Quake, Super Smash Brothers, Street Fighter. When you don't have to get a team from a place, you just have individuals. It would be a great format.
What's it called? WCG, I want to say? World Cyber Games? Yeah. So they did that with StarCraft. I remember
that wasn't nationalistic though, was it? I don't think.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the one I'm thinking about was because they had gold, silver, bronze, and I believe it was the WCG.
Okay.
I'm
thinking of World Cyber Arena. Okay.
No. World Cyber Game. This is a while ago now, but you're right. That's what it had. It was based off of that. They also did do like Counter-Strike though, and so they did some 5v5 games, but the big ones were the 1v1s, Warcraft and Starcraft. In that case, so
even CS lends itself to it better than Dota because CS is very nationalistic in its nature, just the way teams have come up and the way scenes are developed. It's rare to have an import on a CS:GO team. So yeah, all in all, it's a cool idea for a format. It's just the wrong game for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's happening. It's a $1.5 million prize pool. So some teams are going and actually, I also wanted to bring it up because again, we're currently doing the European qualifiers. Actually, by the way, on China eHome qualified out of China, so they are sending a pretty legitimate team. CTY, Old Chicken, Faith Beyond, him, and Y. So. They got to be an expected top dog there, no matter who else goes. But so far, they're the only team out of China going, from what I can tell. But there is a Swedish team. 2 Swedish teams have actually already qualified for the regional LAN, I should say, not the main event, but for the regional LAN initially. And that is No Biggie and Team Team. Now, to give you player names, No Biggie, we're looking at Era, Nox, Jonas and Fan, Hanskin, and Pablo. So very Han-esque there. Proud of them. We got Team Team, which is Loda, Mickey, George C., Insania, and Ake. Quite the mix of players there. So they both made the finals of these qualifiers. They're both going to the regional LAN.
Yeah, it's a lot like last year. I mean, you had Horde and Alliance, which was a lot of these people. They seem to really like this tournament. They like playing with their own, their own countrymen, and yeah, they're definitely putting together some rosters that can compete for sure.
Yeah, but in the end, yeah, it's definitely it's not an event to take too seriously either. It's a fun event, again, a respectable format, but it is a very difficult one to really do, at a top level for sure. So that's happening right now with the qualifiers. The main event itself is not for a long time here, so it's in 2018 sometime, I believe in March maybe. The qualifiers going on. All right, speaking of nationalities, though, one last thing I wanted to really go over here, as this actually happened earlier today, this being some tweets that were sent out by the lovable Kyle of Complexity. His first tweet was, and I quote, "North America is the strongest region in Dota 2, and it's not even close." And then he follows up that tweet a couple minutes later with, "EG Immortals, Optic Gaming, Complexity. Do you see a scarier group at any of the upcoming LANs?" To say the least, this got a lot of reaction for his Twitter. So maybe that was the intention. Knowing Kyle, I'm sure it was. He just loves debate and controversy. But I figured it would be worth bringing up ourselves. We definitely are. We maybe have some NA bias, but how much do we feel? I'll start with you. I mean, how much do you feel like that Kyle actually has a point here, or is he maybe...
Kyle's first tweet is 100% accurate. Like, NA is by far the strongest region as a region right now. Like, there's not multiple dominating teams coming out of any other region that are making good showings at events or have the diversity that NA does right now. The second one about the scarier group, that was a bold statement, and I mean, I'm not going to say that he's necessarily wrong. You swap Immortals for Liquid, and I probably agree with this statement, but obviously I think this one was a little tongue-in-cheek. I don't think he meant this to be quite as literal. It was more of a follow-up to the last tweet, but NA is looking real good right now. And if there can be another couple top fours from NA with the variety of teams we're sending to LANs, then I don't even think this can be argued.
I think we're going to wait until after the major, at least, before we do another round of our top team rankings, both all over across the world and in the nation or in the regions. But yeah, I mean, we have been saying this both, and I'm not going to just change my word on that now. I do feel like North America is the strongest right now. I think the qualifiers have shown that, and with the diversity of teams. And again, Complexity showing, although they did get knocked out to Mineski, the fact that they dominated Newbie and then went on to defeat a very good Na'Vi team, especially with the home field advantage, you could argue, there, and the way they're playing, definitely gave a lot of backup to this statement that he made right now. So obviously everyone's going to have their own opinions on it, and ultimately it's still a little early to really be knowing exactly where things stand, but right now, without having a lot of actual teams from across the world competing against each other yet, because we're so new with the LAN scene this year, I do feel like you could make a very strong argument, and I think that NA is the strongest at this point. So, well said, Kyle. Well said. Always fun to rely on him for bringing up some controversy here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, I think that leads us to the end, though. I think we've covered all we wanted to here for the podcast show this week. Well, okay, so, I mean, maybe we'll talk this out after, too, but now that I think about it, so I'm going to be in the Philippines next week. I'm not too sure what the plans are going to be with next week's podcast show. I'll say this. I do want to still do a show. Like, I want to make it happen. Obviously, I'm going to be literally on the other side of the world, and the time zone's going to be much different. I'm also going to be busy with casting the event itself. But I'm sure there'll be some time that we can kind of work in to where it can get a recording in at least and make something happen. So,
I mean,
the
my
plan
sleep
will be to
schedule's
still have
bizarre
one.
anyway. I'm sure we can make it work.
Yeah, I'm sure we can make something work, right? It's not like this is that difficult to really just make sure to do. So, on that note, guys, there is a plan to do a podcast show next week. I'll obviously let you know if anything does happen. It just doesn't seem realistic, but I don't see
We
why
might
not.
as well make a point to reference it because I was hinting at it last week. The news did come out. .p is going to be no more as of, I believe, early November. We would more than likely plan on continuing the show to some degree. I mean, what are you thinking? Do we just want people to tweet at us, give us their ideas, give us their thoughts?
Well, okay, so I've actually had a lot of people messaging me both on stream and just with Twitter, whatever, because that news did break, obviously. And my response to it, frankly, right now has been, I don't know. I mean, I want to, and you do it too, as you're sounding, obviously, we've talked about this a little bit. We both want to continue this show in some sort. What that exactly is going to be, we frankly don't know just yet. So I think that is a good way to go about it. If you guys have any ideas, I have talked about the possibility of doing even a Patreon. I don't know if that's something we're going to do ultimately just yet, but something like that, to maybe just help make sure it's all good to go and we get like the same, similar, if not the same quality that we have with this show. But hell, even if it's something just as simple as going to a very basic, even Twitch stream again, I don't know. Well, we'll see what we end up doing, but some kind of competitive podcast show I think is still going to be continued here in one way or another. So we'll have more information for you. We still I want to say we have at least, because we're going to go two, maybe three. Yeah, at least two though left with .p. So we'll at least have a couple more shows and we'll obviously update you guys when we do actually have said information. But yeah, as Zrock said, feel free to tweet myself or Zrock and let us know if you have any ideas yourself or what if you want to help in any way. Of course, that could be an option too. Who knows? So that covers that. Anything else to add there, Zrock, or are you good?
That's all I got. Let's go.
Let's do it. Well, wrapping things up, though. So we're going to be watching PGL this weekend. And then I'm going to be, that's going to be fun for me. I'm going to be watching the major, kinda, over there from the Philippines. But no, I am looking forward to that. That's something we didn't really talk about on this show. We talked about it last week, so I was planning to at least preview that a little bit, but we actually don't even know the teams that are going just yet to the Asus Frog LAN here. So I'm going to a LAN. I'm going to be casting something. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be casting yet, but going to be casting something there. We'll see what it ends up being, though. But that's the plan. Let's wrap it up, though. I was BreakyCPK, of course, joined by Zrock here as always. Big shout out to Chessie once again from Complexity for joining us earlier in the show. And have a good night, guys. Hopefully, and I'm sure we will, see you next week for the DotPro. Until then, guys.